The practice of law is a profession, but there is also a business angle to it. It is not just about being a good lawyer, but also about having savvy business skills to run a profitable law practice. In a field that is largely dominated by men, it is of great importance to celebrate female lawyers who have refused to be held down by gender barriers, one of whom is our guest today. Welcome to Ladies Talking Business on PlusTvAfrica. I'm your host, Moremi Akano. Our guest today is an award-winning legal practitioner and the principal partner of the law firm, Stark Legal. She has represented Mobil Producing Nigeria Unlimited, the Nigerian Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Lufthansa German Airlines, among others in oil spill and environmental issues, employment and labor-related issues, just to mention a few. In 2016, she was appointed to the legal drafting team of the proposed Petroleum Industry Reform Bill, which was submitted to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources for onward submission to the National Assembly. She is particularly passionate about issues affecting children's rights and women living with domestic violence, and has worked with several non-profit organizations to create awareness and work on alleviating these issues. She is Mojisola Olugbeni. Hello, Mojisola. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Moremi, for having me.
Great, great, great. So let's just go right into it. So what was the defining moment that made you start your law firm?
Right. So in 2014, I was a newlywed, right? And I worked at a law firm called Kenna Partners. I was privileged to work with one of the best brains in the legal profession, Professor Fabian Ajogu, SAN, FCIR. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I think I excelled. So, and you know the saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. So I was promoted quite rapidly, and I was given a lot of responsibility quite early on in my career. So by 2014, I was working on things that were very confidential. So just a bunch of us at the firm at the time were privy to certain files. So I realized that, you know, I was newlywed, but I was getting home at sometimes midnight. And my husband at the time was a banker. And you know, bankers were notorious at the time for closing really late. So my husband would be parked outside my office about 11:30, still waiting for me to get off work. So it got to a point where, you know, family members started calling me the executive bride and, you know, such names. And, you know, I started getting really snide comments. You know, my husband tried to be understanding, but, you know, I had to have a very difficult conversation with my boss at the time, Professor Ajogu. You know, I basically was very honest with him. I told him, look, my marriage was getting strained because I started working Saturdays. Most Sundays I was at meetings, you know, just to make my husband comfortable. Sometimes I would have him follow me to the meeting so he would know, look, I wasn't there playing, right? But at that time, I realized, look, I needed to be able to work on my own terms. I needed to be able to work on my own time. And so I had a very difficult conversation with my boss. Difficult because I loved my job. I loved what I did. I was very well paid too. So we had a conversation and I left. In fact, when I started Stark Legal, my principal, he remains my principal to date, Professor Ajogu, he came over to Stark Legal to bless our office. Amazing. And yeah, so that was when I left Kenna Partners to start my own firm. Yes.
That's a very, very interesting defining moment. So how were you able to cope in terms of funding and initial direction? Because it was new, you were going to start some, I mean, running a law firm is it's not child's play. So how were you able to get assistance through that?
So for initial funding, right, again, kudos to Stark Legal because it paid me quite well. I was able to earn, you know, very nice bonuses at the end of each year. So I had a bit saved up. Then I had some help with funding from family and close friends and some of my mentors as well who believed in my dream and believed in what I was about to do. But then all the cash I could scrape up at the time was merely able to pay for 1 year's rent of my office space, buy a small 7.5 kVA generator. And I remember at the time when we started, I could only afford to have a receptionist desk out of where I worked. You know, that's why I put my laptop and the printer. But the important thing was, how was I able to raise the funds to remain in business? So what I had done was, before I even set up shop, I had put the word out that, look, I'm going to start my own law firm. And because even while I was at Ken, I relied heavily on my network. I was not only a grinder, I also became a finder quite early on. So I was able to bring in work. So, you know, as soon as I knew I was going to leave, I started putting the word out that I was going to leave. And people were very eager to support, you know. And I soon came to realize that the reason they were eager to support was because I wasn't going about begging for work. I was going around, you know, asking how I could create value for them in their organizations. You know, I would look at their business model and say, look, I think we can do this way and that way. So quite early on, even before I set up, I remember somebody sent me a letter of engagement, and I didn't even have an office address at the time, so they didn't know where to send it to. So that was how my first paycheck, my engagement fees, was what I was able to use to buy more office furniture, pay my, you know, lawyers and the admin staff I had at the time
put the whole
for 3 months.
Shape.
Yes, my first paycheck was what I was able to use to do that.
That's great. Yes. So as somebody running a law firm as a business, how does law prepare one for business?
So I would say law prepares you in a way, and in a way it doesn't. So in our training as lawyers, we are privy to certain courses, law of contracts, law of commercial transactions. These 2 courses help you to understand the basic tenets of contracting, commercial transactions, and things like that. But for us as lawyers, the training as a lawyer in itself does not prepare you for running a practice as a profitable organization. And that brings me to the distinction between the practice of the law and the business of the law. Recently, there's been a lot of programs trying to create enlightenment about what we call the business of the law, because a lot of lawyers go into practice just wanting to help their clients meet their business objectives without putting the systems in place, the structure in place that would ensure that their organizations are profitable. So I don't think that your training as a lawyer prepares you for that. I think you would have to take business courses to be able to be well prepared to run your business as a profitable entity. Interesting.
That's quite insightful. Okay, now we'll just take a very short break now, and we'll be back for more talk. Okay.
Thank you, Moremi.
Okay. I'm sure you say that we have had an interesting conversation so far with our guests, legal conversation actually with our guests so far. But we will take a break now and be back shortly. Thanks for staying with us. You are watching Ladies Talking Business on PlusTvAfrica with our guest, Mojisola Olugbeni of Stark Legal. Will you say that there are a lot of women represented in the legal world today?
Yes. Okay. Not enough, but yes, there are a lot of women represented. In the inner bar, actually, no. And I'll give you an example. 72 legal practitioners were elevated to the rank of senior advocates of Nigeria recently, and they will be conferred on the 14th of December with the rank. However, about less than 10 of them were women. In fact, on that list, I only recognized 3 of them, one of whom is one of my mentors, Mrs. Boma Ajay Alabi, and SAN now. And if I'm wrong, there are only 3 women on that list. In my opinion, if I'm wrong, there can't be more than 10. And that is not good enough at all, nowhere good enough. In the bench, on the other hand, women are actually well represented. In the Lagos judiciary, you'll see that the Lagos judiciary is actually dominated by women. I think a 60-40 ratio, if I'm correct. But not all state judiciaries are like that. So yes, women are well represented in a sense in the bench, but in the inner bar, no.
Okay, so how does being a lawyer and a female affect your business practices? Can you share an example of when you maybe refused to be intimidated by a male lawyer?
Okay, so quickly, this ties me back into the previous question, right? My partner is male, right? And there's something he and I always joke about. We call it male privilege. So if I have a matter in court, I have a little daughter, right? She's going to be 3 years old next year. Sometimes I have to most times I have to prepare her in the morning for school, drop her off in school, and then rush to the courtroom. My partner, on the other hand, doesn't have that kind of problem. So, you know, when we talk about why women are not as well represented in the inner bar, this also ties back into that, because how do I want to get all my Supreme Court cases? How do I want to get, you know, all the requirements that I would need before I can apply for the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria when I can't even wake up and just jump into my suit and go to court. And, you know, and so speaking of intimidation or when I refused to back down, my partner and I had attended a meeting in the past where I was the lead on the transaction, and then my partner and I were meeting a couple of gentlemen to discuss this particular transaction, and they refused for me to talk. They addressed...
That still happens in this day and age?
Apparently it does. I was quite shocked. They kept addressing my partner, and my partner would then defer to me to speak. Then they'll shut it down, ask my partner another question. And at some point, my partner realized I was boiling. So he took the lead and said, gentlemen, this is my partner. She is the lead on the transaction. She's more than capable to handle this transaction. So please let her run you through what we have in store for you. And suffice to say, at the end of that meeting, they were more than impressed. But I wasn't impressed, you know, by that sort of behavior. Yeah. But that's just one instance.
Out of, I'm sure, so many.
Exactly.
So many. Interesting. So talking about law as a business.
Yes.
Very briefly, how do you run a profitable law firm? Like, what are the things that you should have to make your law firm profitable?
Structure, systems, people. A service-based organization is only as good as its people. So you have to ensure that you hire the best. So what we do is we always look out for the best crop straight out of law school. And then in terms of structure, what structure works for you? Do what works for you at the end of the day. We operate a triangular structure, meaning that we're heavy at the bottom and lean at the top. Because any business owner would know that your profit is your income minus your expenses. So you have to always try to, as much as possible, keep your overheads down. So if our wage bill is, you know, lower than other people, is because we don't carry fat elephants. We don't carry people who are just, you know, earning fat salaries and are doing the work that juniors can actually do and maybe even do better. So your structure, and then you have to have the systems in place to support that structure and ensure that you have the best people working for you.
Amazing.
So that's it.
Okay, so as a lawyer who is into business, or for any lawyer who is into business, in your own opinion, how does a legal mind handle illegal and unethical demands in business? Can you relate any experience?
Oh, yes, definitely. Most of our clients would ensure that we don't partake of any such corrupt practices like giving bribes. A lot of our clients actually ask us to, you know, write a sort of disclosure or a sort of indemnity to them to say we would not partake in these kind of events. And, you know, we live in this country where, you know, we know what works, we know how people want certain things done. But what we've done in the past and what works like magic for us actually is to rely heavily on our network. So, for instance, I need to get something done for a client and there's somebody putting up a roadblock, a bottleneck in front of me. We look at him, we find out, we do our research on him. Who is he? Who is his wife? What church does he go?
Oh, wow.
I mean, that church one really works for us because when your church member comes to tell you that, oh, you know, Mojisola is my sister and this thing is on your table and you haven't signed it, in a flash, they get it done.
Signed.
So, we rely heavily on our network. That's how we have managed to not
But that's an interesting
involved.
way to manage it, though. I'm sure a lot of people don't see it that way.
Apparently, but it works for us like magic.
Okay, so I've been itching to hear about this next question. Let's talk about one of your recent work with the federal government of Nigeria.
Yes.
On the drafting of the petroleum industry reform bill. Congratulations, by the way. That's
Thank you
not
very
for
much.
the faint-hearted. So how did you get that opportunity, and what major role did you undertake in drafting the reform?
Right. So it's not a very glamorous story, I must say. Okay, so as you know, I also run a company called Law Publishing and Conference Services Limited. And at the time, we were about to go to press for a book called PIB Getting to the Yes, which was authored by the immediate past Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ebe Kachiko. So now on that company, I also serve as the chief editor. So there were parts of that book that I had flagged, and I had insisted that the book wasn't going to go to press until we had debated those parts of the book. So we had scheduled a review meeting with the minister and the team at LPCS. So we flew to Abuja to see the minister, only to be told that he was not available to see us that day because of a tight schedule. So he directed us to see his senior technical advisor on gas and upstream, Mr. Gbite Adeniji. that day. While in the meeting with Mr. Gbite, he flipped through the book. Mr. Adeniji, he flipped through the book, and then he started questioning me about petroleum industry bill, because that's what the book was about. At some point, I even got a bit irritated, to be honest, because I said, look, I'm not here for a job interview. Why are you asking me all these 21 questions? But I kept going because it's a topic I'm quite passionate about. And at the end of about a 1 hour session, he said, why are you not working with us? I said, excuse me, working with you in what capacity? I run a firm. He said, yes, but we have a technical drafting committee and we can use you. You're very knowledgeable on this subject. Can you resume tomorrow? I said, how? No, sir, I can't. But suffice to say, I resumed the Monday after in Abuja, and we were there for, initially it was supposed to be a 3-month period, but we were there for about 6 to 9 months. Long hours sometimes, back-breaking work. I was the youngest on the team. I was privileged to be working with great legal minds. The team was headed by Chief Sena Anthony, amazing legal luminary. And so the role I played in it was to review what we did. We worked as a team. Everybody had the same roles. We reviewed, we debated all the previous versions and, all the provisions and why we thought certain provisions should be certain ways.
But it's amazing how you found a big role doing something already. I mean, that came from something you were already working on personally.
Yes, and that's what I always say to people, that in everything you do, just be excellent. You don't know who's watching. You don't know why they're watching. So just pursue excellence and success usually follows.
Pursue excellence and success usually follows. We will take another short break, and please stay with us. You are still watching Ladies Talking Business on PlusTvAfrica. So far, we have had a blast with our guest, Mojisola Olugbeni, who is the founding and principal partner of the law firm Stark Legal. So you do a lot of work in the oil and gas space, just as we just spoke about in Nigeria. What are some of the legal issues in the oil and gas industry that are so basic for everyone to understand?
Okay, so the employment issues, and I think those are basic enough. Everybody has some sort of employment. Everybody has some sort of employment issues if you're unfairly terminated, in your opinion. So there's a lot of that in the oil and gas industry. But then the core issues in the oil and gas industry are environmental issues, and these issues affect the communities, gravely.
So environmental issues like
oil spill, gas flaring. Oil spill. There was a time that I had the privilege of handling about 150 oil spill cases for one of the international oil companies in Nigeria, and I know how difficult the communities were, or how they were in even negotiating these cases out of court, because they felt very passionate about the damage that had been done, to their communities because of the oil spillage and because of what they felt might have been the irresponsibility on the part of the organizations, which wasn't really the case. And then gas flaring, on the other hand, is something that, the federal government is assiduously working on to ensure that, we get to a zero flare level in Nigeria.
So, like, what are they doing about it?
So there's a gas commercialization project that was launched in 2016, going into 2017 by the federal government, by the immediate past Minister of Petroleum. And it was the commercialization project which was directed at the IOCs to say, look, if you have gas, rather than flare it, inject it back into the ground, or commercialize it, let people offtake this gas and process this gas for, other useful purposes, rather than just flare it and cause a nuisance to the communities. So the government is actively working on that. I mean, in 2017 as well, the federal government launched the national gas policy, the national oil policy as well. So the federal government is actually working hard to ensure that these environmental issues are, if not totally eliminated, but
reduced greatly. Amazing, amazing. So what lessons have you learned running your law firm in Nigeria?
As with any business, right? I've learned a lot. Nigeria has a way of teaching
you so many things, I know.
Yes, but one of the main lessons I've learned is zero sentiment. Your business is your business. So, for instance, we like to hire the best. So I'm not going to hire a family member just because you're my family member. If I'm going to hire you, you must be excellent at what you do. You must have the top grades. And the same goes for my partner. So what I won't take, my partner won't do. What my partner won't take, I won't do. So that's how we run the organization. Another lesson is, keep your overheads down as much as you can, and do what works for you. Sometimes I see the bigger firms, right, doing, certain things, sponsoring certain conferences and things like that. And, we sit down and we talk about it. Why are we not doing this? And then we look at our books and we say, well, we actually can't afford this. So, we're not going to be copycats. So we're going to do what works for us. So keep your overheads down because, again, like I said earlier, your profit is your income minus your expenses. So if you can reduce your expenses and your income keeps growing, then you have more profit to play with at the end of the day.
Amazing. So what is your advice for a young lawyer fresh out of law school? So what is your expectation advice? Because they usually have huge expectations, I would presume.
Yes, and that's the thing, everybody comes with big expectations and then they sometimes are a bit entitled, right? Because, if they have the best grades from their crop, they feel like, they're entitled to the fattest salaries. But what I would advise them is this, look, don't look for the firm that pays you the most. Look for the firm that's going to give you the opportunities to learn. And that's what I did. When I was fresh out of the UK and I came back to Nigeria after my master's, I researched the firms that I applied to. And yes, I prayed about it because yes, there is a place for grace as well in these things. I prayed about it and I was led to work at Akano Partners. And 3 days into working there, I said, no, I can't be compartmentalized. Why would you put me in a box and say all I'm going to do is company secretarial work? No, I'm a young lawyer. I need to learn everything. I want to do litigation. I want to do arbitration. So I walked into the principal's office and I said, sir, please, can I be put on all the units? I want to. And so what I'll tell young lawyers today is don't allow anybody put you in a box. A young lawyer 1 to 5 years post-call, you should learn everything. You should be going to courts because if you don't do it, how do you know if you like it or you're good at it? So you should try your hands at everything. And then, once you're approaching 4 to 5 years at the bar, you would then know what you're good at, what you're excelling at. And just be ready to work. Be ready to work, be ready to create value. Be ready because, like I said, money follows value. If you're creating value, people will chase you with money. But if you're looking to just get paid and move on, then, you'll be discovered, very, very early in your career. And that'll just be it. You'll just be one of the backbenchers. You'll never really rise to the top. Or at least you won't be the star. So money follows value. Look for how to create value. And in everything, pursue excellence and success will follow. Things like, devotion, commitment, those things go hand in hand with excellence. So if you are able to imbibe excellence in everything you do, I assure you, you'll be successful.
Oh, well, I picked a very lengthy word from what you said. If you're creating value, people will chase after you with money. Please always remember that. So as someone who is passionate about women and children having better living conditions, in your own opinion, what do you think we can do as individuals? I'm not even talking about what the government can do. Sure. As individuals, what can we do to actually help this cause in our own way?
Right. So one of the easiest things to do is to give a listening ear. Open up your hearts, open up your homes, and open up your purses, if you have the financial resources to help. So, for instance, you hear your neighbor screaming at night. Don't just get in your car and say, oh, it's not my business. Go and knock on the door and check. Are you okay? If she says she's okay, and you see that she's bruised, then go and report it if you can. Because that means she probably doesn't want to say anything to you about it. Or call her family in if you have their phone numbers. But do something about it. So, I always say there's always room to do more. There's always room to be more. Be more helpful. Be more patient with people. There's always room to do more. Sponsor. Tell people, you know what, you want to come into my home for something to eat. Whilst having dinner, you can talk to them. Look, I noticed that you have a black eye. What happened? You can talk to me. So things like that, right? There's been instances where, I've taken in people into my home because I felt that they were going through stuff that they weren't willing to tell me, over a business meeting. So I said, come spend the weekend with me. And whilst they were in my house, things came out and we were able to deal with it efficiently. So let's try to do more. Let's try to be more to our neighbors. Let's be our neighbors' keepers, basically. That's what it is. Okay, so on a lighter note, just before we end, you're always slaying. Your photos, your videos on social media, you're always slaying. Well, what is it for you? What prompts you to always the grace
slay?
of God. The grace of God and peace of mind. And it's just, me constantly telling myself that no problem is bigger than the God I serve. That basically just sums it all up. Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Mojisola.
It
was really, really fun talking to you and enlightening as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this episode of Ladies Talking Business with Mojisola Olugbeni on PlusTvAfrica. I hope to see you next week for another episode. I am Moremi Akano. Goodbye.